Hey team, Jen here. Welcome to week 2. I am so happy that you're still with us in this course after you've taken the time to get to know what the course is about and to engage with your peers. It's great to see that you're still here. So week 2 is a pretty easy week, I think. It's a pretty fun week. This week we are engaging in a discussion about modernism through the lens of magical realism. So we're asking questions about how those two themes, those two topics, those two moments intersect and what that brings to us, what kind of fruit that bears. This week we're reading Kafka's The Metamorphosis, which some of you probably have read before. For some of you, this will be a second reading or a third. For some, it will be the first. But either way, it's a very interesting, enjoyable read. Be on the lookout in the discussion forums for a couple of videos that I'll be posting about what I like to talk about and what I noticed about the metamorphosis. We're pairing that this week with Lu Xun's Diary of a Madman, which is a super interesting text. I'm actually teaching a course for undergraduates at my full-time gig on on food, and one of our sections is on cannibalism. We're actually reading Xun's Diary of a Madman there. So I will have some things to say probably in that context as we go on in the discussion forums this week. But in this video today, I'd really like to hone in on some reflections on your performance in week 1. And I'd also like to spend a good amount of time talking about the final project and the milestone that is due today, your topic selection. So rather this week, not today, that is due this week, your topic selection. So first of all, thank you so much for engaging in the forums during week 1 so fully and so well. It was really a pleasure to get to read your introductory um, statements and also to read your first post for the class. It really gave me a clear sense of where students are beginning here at the beginning of things. And while all of us have room to grow and all of us have ways that we can improve how we interact in those forums, I'm really happy with where we're starting. So it's great. I would say as a suggestion that you do make sure that you've watched my video on how to engage in the discussion forums, which you can find in the first discussion forum. That will give you some key insights if you were a student who didn't perform perfectly in terms of your grade. Then you definitely want to visit. That video and make sure that you understand the suggestions and the tips that I give there. During week 2, you'll notice that I'll be grading your week 1 deliverables, and I will always send you out an email when I'm finished with the grading, and I'll give you instructions for how to access the grades, um, especially for in the first couple weeks. That way you'll be able to read my rubric comments and my end comments and any other types of comments, voice comments that I might leave for you. So stay tuned for that. But you can access your grades pretty much immediately as soon as they're graded. So I tend to grade in the order that deliverables are received or posted. So keep that in mind that if you post your deliverables fairly early, you'll be sure to get your grades first. So that's just the way that I like to work. Next up for your week 2 big deliverable this week is your first milestone, which will help to move you toward the final paper in week at the excuse me, at the end of the course. So here in week 2, we start that busy work of starting to identify a context, a topic of interest, and the text that we're interested in working with, and the lenses that we're interested in working with. And this is so important, even if you haven't read the text, or perhaps especially if you have never read the text before, to start to imagine what these texts might say to global contexts. So here are some suggestions for getting started. My first suggestion is to just go through the reading list. Take a look, compile a list of every text, primary and secondary, that we're reading this semester. Just write them all down. Then you should go and do some preliminary exploratory research on what those texts are about. So you can use any quick source that you like. I like Shmoop. You know, that's a good one to use. It's free. I've actually written some criteria for Shmoop, excuse me, before, but you want to just access a really quick, brief summary of what these works are. That can give you a general sense of the text without having read them. And then you want to think about, secondly, you want to think about your particular unique ways of reading text. What do you tend to care about when you read any text? Is there any topics that you scavenge for as you read, that you care about, that you look for, that you close read, that you like to analyze? Ways that you like to read into text. That's going to help you to set up your context. Now, I really do like students to take the topic a step further here in this first milestone by not just writing the topic, but writing the context. And in the supplementary videos for this week, in week 2, you'll see that I have a video posted on context. Please watch this video. I also have some examples of my own contexts from pieces that I've written attached to this announcement this week that can give you a sense of exactly what I'm looking for when I'm asking you for a context. If you need more direction with how to narrow down a topic to a context, there are 2 things you can do. First of all, you can email me and I can send you some handouts that I oftentimes give to undergraduates about context when I introduce that to them in basic writing composition classes. The second thing I can do, which is much more fruitful, is you can schedule an online office hours appointment with me and we can talk one-on-one about your ideas. Students oftentimes get the most from that kind of conversation. So those are the first 2 things you should do. First, get a general summary, a general sense of the text. Second, really consider how you read text, what you tend to look for. My third suggestion is to make sure that you are synthesizing, that you have a clear map of how you might be able to synthesize the text that you're going to be working with or that you intend to work with. And finally, when it comes to a literary theoretical lens, I like to encourage graduate students to really step outside the box in terms of merging or marrying various literary critical lenses. Um, Not just saying, I'm going to work on gender studies, right? That's really broad. Gender studies encompasses so much masculinity theory, queer theory. So I think that there's, you want to be very specific and narrow it down to exactly how you think you're going to read this text. So you might say something like, I'm going to approach um, whatever it is, the metamorphosis through the lens of psychoanalytic theory, but particularly looking at Jungian archetypes. And then I'm going to update that by looking at some works from 20th and 21st century psychoanalytical theorists, such as, blah, 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 name them off. And I'm going to do that I'm going to complicate that lens by applying a Marxist lens and also a masculinity study lens, especially honing in on affect theory and especially the emotions of anger and shame or something like that. So rather than saying something really general and broad, what you're doing is you're chiseling out a space for your particular interest, your particular ways of reading this text. So it becomes very complex. I highly recommend that you visit the Yale University video series on literary theory if you need a refresher course. The professor for that course doesn't um, include all of the literary theory schools. There are so many. A couple that he leaves out: narratology, affect theory, eco-criticism. The list can go on and on. But if you want to get a general sense of the foundational literary theoretical schools, visiting the Yale series, you'll find a link for this in the announcements this week, is a great idea. Also, if you're not sure about what theories really appeal or apply to your unique ways of close reading and analysis in a general sense, feel free to hit me up. I love to talk about these things. So I hope that gives you a good sense of what I'm looking for this first milestone. And also keep in mind that a good academic line of inquiry constantly evolves and constantly changes. So the parameters that you lay out for yourself here in week 2 shouldn't be the same parameters that you have in week 5 or week 8 or week 10. And I think that's a really great thing. So keep that in mind as you go. This is a fun activity to get your creative juices flowing and to get you starting to think about texts that appeal to you, why they appeal to you, and how you might approach those texts. Not going off what the text is about, but rather going off what you tend to care about when you read text, right? That's really asking you to do a lot of busy work in terms of self reflection here in week 2. That's a big deal. I hope you guys have a wonderful week, and I'll see you here next week. Bye for now.